how we miss a person when he's absent. All right, I'm referring to Mark. In the awareness of God's presence here and now, let us pray. Father, Mother God, we give thanks for this opportunity to be open to the awareness of your presence here, now. Acknowledging that opening to your presence is our choice at any time, in any place. Recognizing that as we do that, we allow ourselves the entree into peace, into greater understanding, greater awareness, a greater capacity to offer unconditional love in this moment. So in this awareness of your presence now, we feel your love moving through us, touching and healing every aspect of our being, our physical being, our mental being, our emotional being. Breathing into that awareness. We feel the blessings that are upon us constantly. And for this we give thanks. So it is that together we say, Amen. Well, is this divine order? You all have heard the term divine order. It's often bandied about in unity circles that, something untoward happens, some tribulation arises, some relationship goes south, and we can fall back on this, well, it's all in divine order. Well, we were traveling north on Broadway last Monday. My wife and I have what we call a time machine. It's also our escape module. That with 7 people in our house, we appreciate the opportunity to get out of town. So we were traveling north on Broadway, right at University. You may, if you're familiar with the campus area, University and Broadway is the northwest corner of the campus, or the established campus anyway. And we were approaching the stoplight. It was green. We were, 10 or 15 miles an hour, which is unusual for me. But I had a car on my left, a high-profile car of some sort. I couldn't see what was coming on the left, but Linda said, "Look out!" And there in front of me was a bicyclist. The car to my left, half a car length ahead of me, clipped his rear wheel. He was traveling eastbound on University. Clipped his rear wheel, threw him off balance, and then I hit him. And he rolled up over the car, hit the windshield, and so he's lying on the sidewalk behind the car. So he hit right here, and then he rolled over, and his shoulder crushed the windshield right in front of Linda. And so we could say, well, is that divine order? Was I supposed to be there at that point in time? I called him in the emergency room. A few hours later, he and I had several. We talked a bit before he went in the ambulance, and he said, "You guys are good. This was totally my fault. Don't, I'm sorry for ruining your day." And so I I talked to him in the emergency room, and he had abrasions. He scrapes on his back, some scrapes and bruises on his legs, and he had pulled ligaments, muscles in his upper back. He was wearing a helmet, but you can see he had some momentum going into our windshield. One could say, well, yeah, that was divine order. That was divine order, because our car was, contrary to like an F-150 pickup or van, our car had the opportunity for him to tuck and roll, and actually he did a good job of it. He raised up his leg so that my bumper didn't crush his leg, and he rolled over. My car hit his bike, and the bike went out into the middle of the intersection. But I haven't talked to him since, I think it was Tuesday. But at that point in time, he was just shaken up, bruised, and be wearing the neck brace. Nonetheless, the question is, are all events in our lives divine order? Is this an aspect of unity theology that we can hang on to, or is this something that the founders of unity came up with that excuses our inattention or our fault or our participation in some untoward event? Well, I think of divine order as a network of paths. Let me explain that with this illustration. This being the possible paths, if you will, representing the possible paths that we have in life. And at any point in time, there is that point of awareness. And from that point of awareness, based upon the conditions that are around us, the relationships, the circumstances, the conditions, all of that gives us the opportunity to make choices. And the choices that we make can branch in any one of different directions. And those choices that we make are indeed the elements of the dynamic of our life flow. And so at any point in time, when we come into this awareness that we have a choice, that we are somewhere in this network of divine order. That's not to say that the left is our destination, the left is our destination and the right is our past, or contrary, that it's not about here going to there, but rather it's about at any point in time having the awareness that we have a choice. And so this concept of divine order is one that actually is a deep philosophical teaching that on the surface may say, well, everything is fine. Well, this comes to a discussion of non-resistance. And in Eric Butterworth's book, Discover the Power Within You, chapter 8, he talks about non-resistance. And I got to tell you, as I was reading through this chapter, I was feeling like, oh my God, you know, I'm really not in touch with this at all, because I am not a practitioner of non-resistance. You may know that my particular approach to what we have going on in national politics right now is not let bygones be bygones, but nonetheless, we have in this idea of non-resistance, Butterworth offers us this passage. In Matthew 5:38-42, Jesus is saying, you have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the evildoer, But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, give your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. Give to everyone who begs from you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. Well, that's kind of a tough pill to swallow, isn't it? How many of you have had friends or relatives come to you and say, hey, I'd like to borrow $300? Or that could be a child. Yeah. How many of you have had the circumstance where someone has blamed you for something that didn't occur? How many of you have had the opportunity to experience some tribulation out in your life where you can look at a particular individual as being the source of that energy, right? It's tough to turn the other cheek, yet here we got it in Matthew, quoting Jesus. Okay. So anyway, as we were going through this, as I was studying this chapter, I was feeling like, boy, there's something missing here. I'm not connecting with this for some reason. And then I realized, wait a minute. I know of this passage in John 2:13 to 17. It's very confusing. The Passover of the Jews was near. And Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple he found people selling cattle, sheep, and doves, and the money changers seated at their tables. Making a whip of cords, he drove them all out of the temple, both the sheep and the cattle. He also poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. He told those who were selling the doves, take these things out of here. Stop making my Father's house a marketplace. His disciples remembered that it was written, zeal for your house will consume me. So how does that fit with turn the other cheek? These are both quotes attributed to Jesus. And so was Jesus confused? Did he forget when he was turning over the money changers' tables? Did he forget what he had taught several years before? Or was this something that we're not understanding about what Jesus is teaching? Well, actually, in my meditation this morning, I realized this, that Jesus is actually one of the great psychologists, one of the informed, aware people who understood the workings of the human mind. And in the first situation, he was talking about our relationship personally with others. That I have someone who is causing me conflict here, I need to turn the other cheek. I have someone who is wanting to borrow from me here, I pay them. I give them the money that they're looking for. Because what that does is that sets up within our own consciousness a frame of peace, a willingness to look upon all of creation and appreciate it for what it is. Not for what it might be, not for what it was, but rather for what it is. And so in his admonition that we do not resist the evildoer, that we turn the other cheek, that we lend to those who ask to borrow from us, that we are allowing ourselves to have an experience of peace. And in that experience of peace, we can be open to the presence of unconditional love. And on the other hand, he is looking at institutional violations of our personal value, of our personal worth, of our opportunities to practice this non-resistance. And he is resisting the institutional conflagration. He's resisting the institutional conflict. He is resisting the taking away of our opportunity to experience peace. So on the one hand, he is saying that in our personal relations, focus on peace. And in the situation of the institutions that are oppressing the people, resist. Do what you think is right. So that resolved for me these two what seemingly are contradictory teachings of Jesus. And so as we look then at this concept of divine order, and we look at our place in this, the pathway of our, let's come back, we'll come back. As we look at our location in this pathway, if you will, that at any particular node, when a condition arises, when a relationship explodes, or when a situation warrants it, we must make choices. And those individual choices that we make need to be founded on this concept of non-resistance. To look upon that situation that the bicyclist hit our car, well, we have great fun in that car. We enjoy using that car, experiencing the top-down speed and the fast cornering and the tight tight performance of that car in the mountains. We love that, and it turns out we can still do that, right? I took the car into Stuttgart. Turns out I called my BMW dealer, and I asked him, where do you recommend your clients take their cars? He said, actually, there are two places in Denver, one down in Inglewood and one up in Arvada. I said, oh, really? There's one in Arvada. He said, yeah, it's called Stuttgart. It turns out it's over here at 60th and Ellison or something like that, between Wadsworth and Sheridan. So I took it in, and turns out they are not going to try to fix the hood. The hood is slightly curved, big expanse. They said that when you try to take a dent out in a hood, you literally chase the dent across the hood. And it's far more trouble to fix than if you just buy a new one. And so he gave me an estimate, and I gulped. It was $5,100 to fix the car. So I called my Allstate agent. He sent me to claims. Claims told me, well, you know, the way we handle this is we'll take a look at the estimate. We'll negotiate with the body shop, but in the end, because it's less than $10,000, we're just going to cut you a check. So I don't know. Maybe the accident is going to bring us $3,500 or $4,000 in our cash in our account. But nonetheless, the divine order in this might have been that we weren't an F-150 truck, and he has learned his lesson by having pulled ligaments, pulled muscles, strained bruises and scrapes, so that he will never. He's 35 years old. It's not as if he's a young kid that didn't know any better. But at 35 years old, maybe he learned his lesson not to run a stoplight on a bicycle. And maybe that would carry over to not run a stoplight at all. But nonetheless, we have these situations in our life that if we are practicing this concept of non-resistance, then we can approach any condition, any situation, any relationship that seems to have gone south and still maintain peace, still maintain an opportunity to experience the divine love that is always available to us. Eric Butterworth offered us, back up here a couple of slides. Eric Butterworth related the story of Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln had a cabinet And in this cabinet, he had a particular, I don't remember the fellow's name, maybe you remember his name, but he was a cabinet member that was constantly a pain in his keister. And he was asked about that. He said, why don't you get rid of this guy? And he offered this. He said, some years ago, I was passing a field where a farmer was trying to plow with a very old and decrepit horse. I noticed that on the flank of the animal, a big horse fly, and I was about to brush it off when the farmer said, don't you bother that fly, Abe. If it wasn't for that fly, this old hoss wouldn't move an inch. Lincoln was saying that the difficult people that he had to work with were providing the challenges that kept him digging in himself for greater strength. Thus he was accomplishing great feats, not in spite of, but because of his opponents. It takes a great man to see and admit to this. The thorn in the side that we resist so strenuously may be more important than we know in the accomplishments we do make or the success we do achieve. So those opportunities where we are pressed, when we are challenged, when we have pushback from our environment, it could be that that is just what we need at that point in time to gain strength, to gain patience, to gain an insight into forgiveness, to to turn the other cheek and experience a different perception on the situation or the relationship or the conditions that we're confronted with. It could well be that that horsefly on the ass of that horse is such that that's exactly what we need at that point in time. And if we're open to the concept of divine order, if we're open to the concept that, hey, yeah, this is what's supposed to be going on right here, right now, maybe we will have the insight that will allow us to grow, that will allow us to gain a greater facility with handling the tribulations that confront us, the relationships that are soured, the conditions that are challenging us. Maybe. Eric Butterworth also offers us this quote, and I'll close with this. He says that the unforgivable sin is simply the closed mind, the mind that is made up, that will not let the Spirit reveal new truths. And accepting this concept of divine order allows us an open mind to be able to consider whatever situation confronts us as a means of expanding our awareness, of growing of elevating our consciousness, of allowing us to, in the face of tribulation, nonetheless have peace of mind. The interesting thing is that it is all about choice. When we're confronted with the challenge, when we're confronted with the person who is driving us nuts, we can ask the question, am I the horse or am I the fly? We'll have our meditation. As we come into our as we settle into this moment, allowing this moment to open up in all of its purity, all of its glory, all of its potential. In this moment, are we able to sit in equanimity, looking upon the conditions of our life? Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. Maybe this is positive, maybe this is negative. But without judging, but without assigning and declaring its worth, are we able to do that? Allow yourself to recall a situation in which you were challenged. Challenged financially or challenged via relationships. Allow yourself to bring that to mind and just let it sit without assigning value to it, without declaring it good or bad. There's the story of the old farmer that had a prize stallion. And the town looked upon him with envy that he had such a beautiful, strong, responsive horse. And one day it broke down its corral and it escaped. The townspeople were saddened for this farmer. Yet the farmer said, well, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. Several days later, the horse returned with a beautiful mare. The townspeople said, oh, that's wonderful. What a glorious thing. And he said, well, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. And his son was trying to tame this mare that came in with the stallion. And the mare bucked him off, broke his leg. Townspeople said, oh, that's horrible. The farmer said, well, maybe it's good. Maybe it's bad. And it took his son a long time to heal from this broken leg. But in the meantime, the king's army came through, recruiting all able-bodied young men to go off to fight in their army. They looked upon the son. He wasn't able-bodied, so they passed him over. The townspeople said, wow, that's wonderful. And the farmer said, well, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. Are we able to look at that condition that challenged you and see it not for its worth, but to see it as it is? And recognize it is just one of those opportunities for us to come into a greater realization of who we are and our relationship with the divine. Do we have that power of equanimity to allow ourselves the opportunity to choose wisely in each and every situation, calling for choice? Look upon that challenge. Allow it to be neither good nor bad, but merely an opportunity to learn and an opportunity to choose. Breathing in and breathing out. We have the power of choice. And as we come back into this time and space, let us come back sharing the words of Hallelujah. 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 And we'll take an offering for unity now. As we take our offerings in our hands, let us bless them with this offering statement. Together, please. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I give in love because I trust in God. And once again, Patty Jackson, irreverence.